Demeco Ryans is going to be the next head coach for the Houston Texans.
This is so stupid.
First, it was David Culley. He got fired. Then it was Lovie Smith. Then he got fired. Does Demeco Ryans break the Texans' streak of firing head coaches after 1 year? We'll see.
Yeah, I think you have to, because I felt like Lovie Smith was the only one willing to take that smoke with the Houston Texans, because who wanted that job? That team was a complete dumpster fire. You're dealing with the potential that the organization is going to come under investigation from enabling a super predator in Deshaun Watson. So it's like, Lovie Smith was really the only guy who wanted to take that job. And I feel like there's a lot of people who just didn't want to go there. And for Demeco Ryan, who's someone who's a young coordinator, I think this is a mistake. I feel like if you're a young head coach, you have to be very careful where your first coaching destination is, because that could ruin your reputation for the rest of your career. And you may not get another opportunity. So if you're going to go out there when you could interview potentially with Arizona, Denver, who has more talent, or any of the other teams who are going to be looking for a head coach, the Indianapolis Colts. This is another discussion we'll get to after this. But I just feel like it's a mistake if you're a young head coach. I feel like you need a veteran presence who's going to come in there, especially if you're a defensive guy. I feel like Robert Saleh has done a good job with the Jets, but they're still not where they want to be. But the problem's still quarterback, and he hasn't been able to develop Zach Wilson or Mike White to their full potential. So I feel like if you're Demeco Ryan, you have to go out and get a really good offensive coordinator to back you up, and then get your quarterback there. But if you're a defensive head coach, Sean McDermott was brilliant by bringing Brian Dable to back him up. Andy Reid, offensive head coach. You know who he has? He brought in Steve Spagnuolo. You know what Sean McVay did when he's an offensive head coach? He went in and he got Wade Phillips of his defensive coordinator. Same thing, Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo. So all these players, I just think it's a mistake to him. But I think it's hilarious that Houston's about to hire a guy that sued them.
Yes, for those who don't know, Demeco Ryans was a really solid defensive player from 2006 to 2017. But then he had an Achilles sprain on the turf of, you guessed it, the Houston Texans. So then he sued them. He said, hey, I probably could have played a couple more years if it weren't for your fucking turf. Sued them. They came to an agreement behind closed doors in 2020. 3 years later, he's going to be the next coach for the Houston Texans. It's amazing. You know, we talk about teams being cursed. We talked about the Chargers at length when they lost against the Jags. Yeah. We've talked about, you know, the Colts and their monstrosities. But the real team that we got to shit on for a second is the Houston Texans. I mean, good Lord. You had a top 5 quarterback, arguably the best wide receiver in the league.
Yeah.
You had a pretty good team. J.J. Watt was on your team. And within just a few years, you traded DeAndre Hopkins for absolutely nothing. You traded him for a washed David Johnson.
Yep.
And then put in Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks hates it there. Yeah. Genuinely hates it there. And then you covered up the Deshaun Watson nonsense. And then it came out that you had non-disclosures with him. Terrible. You fired, Bill O'Brien. And then it becomes David Culley's team. David Culley actually overperforms for the Texans. Yeah, they were 4-13. But that team, the amount of games that they won, they beat the number 1 seeded Tennessee Titans, a number of other games that they didn't deserve to win. Overperformed, they fired him, didn't make sense. Then they hired Lovie Smith. They're terrible all season. They're the number 1 overall team all the way until the last game of the year, and then they go for it to lose the number 1 overall pick, as I predicted, the Texans whisperer.
Yeah.
And now they're going to hire Demeco Ryans.
Yeah.
The guy who sued them.